This is going to be a fairly short video about a topic that volumes have been written on, and that's really a core concept within Buddhism, namely interdependence. And I'll read you a paragraph that came from an artificial intelligence source, which said that interdependence, often referred to as dependent origination or dependent arising, is a fundamental principle in Buddhism. It posits that all phenomena arise in relation to other factors. Nothing exists independently. This interconnectedness extends to all aspects of existence, from the physical world to mental states. And I think those of you who have watched my videos or tuned into my channel have probably heard me talk before about a mysterious kind of interconnectedness that represents fundamental reality in a very true way, and that we're ordinarily not that in touch with, particularly in the West, and most particularly in the United States, where there's a big emphasis on individualism. For example, a friend of mine wrote, he said, "We Americans don't think in terms of what's best for the group. We denigrate such thinking as socialist. We prize individualism. The preamble to the Constitution states that one purpose of government is to, quote, promote the general welfare. It also speaks of unity, not individuality. In contrast, a Chinese saying is that it's the nail that sticks out that gets hammered down." What he does is he goes on, and I've talked enough to this friend about Buddhism and my sort of often having made reference in my own head and with people I talk to about the importance of thinking of the middle way, which was of course the historical Buddha's great insight. One of his great insights was that the path to truth is best tread by avoiding the extremes, in his case of extreme asceticism on the one hand or indulgence on the other. But in any case, when my friend reflected upon the implications of this individuality versus hammering the nail down, he said to him the middle path idea is, first, everybody gets food, clothing, shelter, medical care, and education. Then we throw it open to competition and allow individuals to stand out. So again, I'll leave that hanging there if anybody wants to comment upon it. But before I share a little bit more of what the artificial intelligence source had to say about interdependence within the context of Buddhism, what I'd like to do is to reference another non-Buddhist source, which is a pretty unusual source. Namely, I want to quote the mother of the now presumptive nominee for the Democratic Party for president here in the United States, Kamala Harris. If any of you have been following politics in the United States, you know that there's been a great deal of change here in just the past week or so, such that the vice president, namely Kamala Harris, is now likely to be put forth as a nominee for president in the upcoming November election. But in any case, apparently there's a meme going around, and I honestly didn't know what the term meme meant, but I'll quote you this paragraph from the New York Times from July 23rd, 2024, and give you a sense of what I'm talking about here in terms of this coconut meme, where Madison Malone Kircher, the reporter who wrote this article, said, Vice President Kamala Harris said last year at a White House event, she said, quote, "You think you just fell out of a coconut tree?" Vice President Kamala Harris said last year at a White House event, chuckling as she quoted her mother, quote, "You exist in the context of all in which you live and what came before you," close quote. And by the way, Kamala Harris's mother is actually Indian. She was born in India and was a quite well-known scientist who moved to the United States, and of course Kamala was her daughter. So both in relation to herself and to her sister, this would be a statement that her mother would make toward the girls. She would say, "You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? You exist in the context of all in which you live and what came before you," which is such a wonderful kind of explication of this notion of interdependence that is such a core concept within Buddhism. And by the way, the reporter goes on just for another couple of sentences here to say, perhaps it was the way she laughed at herself, or the way a folksy saying took a sudden philosophical turn. Whatever the reason, over a year later, it has become the line that launched 1,000 memes. And just for those of you who, like me, didn't know what a meme is, which probably most of you do, I'll ask my Google Assistant, hey Google, what is a meme?
According to Wikipedia, a meme is an idea, behavior, or style that spreads by means of imitation from person to person within a culture and often carries symbolic meaning representing a particular phenomenon or theme.
So that said, I'll let you Google coconut tree and Kamala Harris if you want more detail on that particular meme. But in the meantime, and it was also the Google generated artificial intelligence that I used to create the following description of interdependence in Buddhism, I'll share with you some more detail, including that first paragraph that I mentioned, and then some additional comments or detail as to the definition of this within Buddhism. Interdependence, often referred to as dependent origination or dependent arising, is a fundamental principle in Buddhism. It posits that all phenomena arise in relation to all other factors. Nothing exists independently. This interconnectedness extends to all aspects of existence, from the physical world to mental states. And it goes on to talk about what are the key points about interdependence. 1. No inherent self. The idea of a fixed, independent self is refuted. Our sense of self is a complex interplay of physical and mental factors. 2. Cause and effect. Everything that arises has causes, and everything that ceases has conditions that lead to its cessation. 3. The 12 links. This is a detailed explanation of how suffering or dukkha arises and how it can be ended. It outlines a chain of 12 interconnected factors, from ignorance to old age and death. And then 4. Emptiness. The concept of emptiness is closely related. Things are empty of inherent existence, but they are not empty of their interdependent nature. And what are the implications of interdependence? 1. Compassion. Understanding interdependence fosters compassion as we recognize our interconnectedness with all beings. 2. Ethics. It promotes ethical behavior as our actions have consequences for others. 3. Wisdom. It leads to wisdom as we see the impermanent and conditional nature of all things. And 4. Liberation. Ultimately, understanding interdependence is a path to liberation from suffering, as it reveals the illusory nature of the self and the causes of suffering. So in essence, interdependence is a cornerstone of Buddhist philosophy. It offers a profound perspective on the nature of reality and provides a framework for ethical living and spiritual growth. I'm not going to go on and on about this, and of course the detailed teachings regarding interdependence and these 12 links and causes and effects and so forth can be found in the earlier form of Buddhism within the Pali Canon. Those suttas or texts that were written in the Pali language that form the fundamental basis of Theravadan Buddhism. So with that, I'll leave you to do your own research and check this out in more detail as it might have interest for you. And or those of you who know a lot more than I do about it, please do feel free to share your insights in comments below this video. Thank you very much. Namantaps. Namantaps. Namantaps.